Welcome to the Up Podcast, raw real talk on everything young parenting.
From self-care, co-parenting, and family planning, to balancing school, work, relationships, and goals.
Together, we're challenging society's assumptions and building a safe and supportive community for young parents.
One honest conversation at a time. So join us on the journey.
Hi guys, welcome back to another Yup podcast. Today we have the pleasure of meeting with another amazing organization named SisterSong. So today we'll be talking all things reproductive justice, women of color, activism, and all of the things in between. But as always, I'm Divine.
And I'm Brandy. And yes, we are super duper lucky to have this sit down and have this conversation with the one and only Bahja. And she is representing SisterSong wonderfully. We have been really cultivating a relationship and a collaboration with SisterSong. Yup has recently. And so we're really, really grateful to have this conversation to learn more about the work that they're doing in the reproductive justice space, but then to also dive into some kind of taboo, maybe some juicy things too that people don't talk about, and we will kind of give space for it here. So without further ado, Bahja, thank you for joining us. We would love to hear a little bit about you. Talk to us about how you got into this work. Introduce us to you.
Yes, thank you all for having me. I'm so excited to be on this episode. I have followed your videos and your work and just excited to have this conversation that a lot of young people often don't get a chance to learn about. And so a little bit about me. I am Bahja Jordan. I use pronouns she, her, and hers, and I am the youth coordinator at SisterSong, Women of Color Reproductive Justice Collective. I know that's a long name. And I have been in this role for over a year now, but I'm not new to the work of SisterSong. I started off as a volunteer, then I interned with the organization under their birth justice work, which really got me introduced to maternal health and doula care and midwifery, and how are we supporting our young pregnant and parenting folks. So I have been following this work for a long time. My background is I have a master's in public health centering behavioral and health education sciences from Emory University. And then my undergraduate degree is in health sciences, community health education. So I've always had a love and passion for educating folks around all things around health. So I've talked about alcohol and tobacco use. I've done mental health education, but my love is sexual and reproductive health. I started that work in college, working at our health center that was on campus. I was the condom lady, passing out condoms to students, doing on-campus condom demonstration. And I just love that work. And I also had the chance to do workshops with classes. So professors would reach out. I would go into their classrooms of first year college students, second year, third year, and on, talking about consent and sexually transmitted infections and pregnancy and where they can go for services. And I realized while doing my campus work that a lot of college students who are about to graduate were leaving with not understanding how to use a condom or how to understand pregnancy symptoms or when they should get tested. And I started to ask my peers, did you ever have sexual education in high school? Did you have like some form of sex ed? And I would say if not half of the peers I would talk to did not have any form of sex ed. And if they did, it was abstinence only. So really that curriculum is just saying, don't have sex. We're not talking about it. Just talk to an adult if you have a question and concern. And that's when I realized, I want to be that person who can educate our young people in K through 12 education about their bodies outside of just sexually transmitted infections and pregnancy. But what does consent mean? What does it mean to put boundaries in place? Sex is not a scary thing, and it's often framed as a scary thing. So let's normalize these conversations. We see it in media, but we're not talking about it. And so that when I graduated college, I knew I wanted to go into teaching K through 12 sex ed, and I did. I was able to teach at a beautiful high school in Oakland, California, which I am from San Diego, California. So the West Coast is my hometown. I forgot to add that. But I got to teach at a beautiful high school in the Bay Area where I can have more of a comprehensive conversation. We dove into pleasure and consent and pre-pregnancy, post-pregnancy, and all the things in between. And so that just highlights a little bit of my background. Now doing my work at SisterSong as a youth coordinator, I don't get to do as much sexual health conversations as I like, so I'm very excited for this call today. My work right now has really been educating young people about what reproductive justice means, and it is the human right to decide if and when you want to parent, to be able to parent the children you have and will have in safe and healthy communities. And it's the right to bodily autonomy free from harm from the state and from individuals. And so I spend a lot of time right now helping young people work through those tenets, those pillars, that framework that we use, pulling them apart. I get asked a lot from folks of, well, how do I know if I'm ready to parent, or I'm parenting now, but I never really had to make this decision, but how can I raise my child in a safe and healthy community? What role can I take up in ensuring the safety of my child? And so we spend a lot of time having those kind of conversations.
I love it. I have like goosebumps. All
Oh,
of
no, I love it. Thank you so much for sharing and introducing yourself. We love that you love sex ed and all of the things in between, because we're going to continue talking about all of the things. But for listeners who may be new to Sister Songs, can you tell us a little more about their mission and a little more about why centering Indigenous women and women of color is so essential to, the reproductive justice movement?
Yes. Sister Song is a Southern based organization. It was formed in 1997, the year I was born, by 16 organizations of women of color. So it covers Native Americans, African Americans, Latinx communities, Asian, and all the different minority communities that we have here in this country. And really, this organization, Sister Song, works to bring together all of these communities because we recognize that we have the right and responsibility to represent ourselves and our community and the equally compelling need to advance the perspectives and needs of women of color. And so we at Sister Song, being a collective, we work with other organizations to say, hey, you cannot talk about our bodies without us being in this space or giving us the opportunity to advocate for our own self. Another thing about Sister Song is we were the organization that was formed to move the work of reproductive justice forward. So, reproductive justice is a term that was coined in 1994 by 12 Black women who convened at a conference in Chicago and were talking about just the things that they experienced. But the problem with that movement is that it left out all marginalized communities. And so these Black women came together and say, look, I may need access to birth control, but I also need access to food to feed my children. I also need to be able to afford the rent for my home or my mortgage of my home to keep a roof over my head and my family's head. And so reproductive justice takes that reproductive health to another step forward that says we need a just system where it's not about just the reproductive health care I can receive, but how can I navigate the day-to-day life that also impacts my reproductive health? And so that's just to tie in how RJ came about, and Sister Song is now doing the work to keep pushing for a just world that we need.
Yeah. That's really important. And I appreciate you for breaking it down. One, for giving us a history lesson, because if we don't know where we came from, we don't know where we're going. And that's in
Yes.
any space, whether
Yes.
it be reproductive spaces or otherwise, even in parenting spaces. And so I appreciate you breaking that down from, this kind of big historical perspective to even the small things that we may see in our day to day. And so because reproductive justice, even advocacy, we talk a lot about that, advocating for yourself, whether it be in the education space, in healthcare, whatever it looked like. So we have a lot of young parents who feel sometimes that decisions are made for them or have been
Yeah.
made for them without their consent, without their understanding, without any sort of education or conversation. And so we talk a lot about advocacy and all of that. So I would love for you to kind of give an example or even share how young parents who, like you said earlier, you may already be parenting. And so how does this fit for me? How do I advocate for myself in a space where I've already kind of dabbled in? Maybe I already have a child, so how do I advocate for my reproductive autonomy,
Yeah.
if that makes sense?
Yes, that does make sense. And I will start off by acknowledging that we live in a society that shames young folks for being pregnant. And I'm sure many people know that and aware of that. And because of that, there's been this intentional effort to make it very hard for folks to parent. And so one thing that I like to educate the young folks that I have worked with is understanding first your rights, understanding what can you access at your age. I do acknowledge some states still have guardian permission slips for different healthcare services. I even recently learned that there's some states where, because a young person is a minor in the healthcare system, even though they have a child, their guardian still is the only person who can access their child's medical records. And so there is laws and policies that are making it hard for our young people to be able to advocate for the care that they need and that their children need. So one, I'm always going to say, understand the rights of your state. Understand that maybe being a parent, there may be some rights that can get waived because you're now raising another person. Another thing is get trusted adults in your corner. If you're living in a state, like I just mentioned, where you have to go through another person just to get your own child's medical record because you yourself is still a minor, find a trusted adult that can work with you. Talk with people that you trust. Try to get as much information. You have to get informed. And I know that may seem scary, but find someone that you can talk to, that you can flesh these concerns out with, and know that you're not alone in your advocacy. Get a doula if you need one for your labor. Get a postpartum doula for aftercare. Get a therapist if you need to process the emotional things that you're going through, but find someone that you can trust who can be in your corner. Doula process is one of the best things I can say when advocating for yourself. Another thing that I think I can offer our young people is understanding that you are human, you deserve to parent, you have the right to parent, you are a great parent, and I'm sorry if no one has told you that, and that because it is your right around this decision, a right to raise the children and how you want to raise them, find your voice, tell your story, and tell your story over and over again because your story is going to inspire someone else who's also going to inspire someone else. And so advocacy is even just storytelling. One thing about reproductive justice is that that term, the work of SisterSong, comes out of people telling their story, telling their experiences, just saying, I just lived in this community, this is what I'm going through. And I can guarantee you, you're not the only one. And through that, that's how you build that community. That's how you're able to move forward and really make the changes that you're needing to see. So I'll also offer is sharing that story that you have.
Yeah. No
Love
shame
that.
in your story.
No.
Yeah. And that's what Yup is all about. I mean, what a better way to word that, advocacy as storytelling. I really love that. And I appreciate you recognizing the fact that every state is different. So finding that trusted adult could make all the difference. I'm kind of curious to hear what are some of the major concerns and needs that you hear directly from young parents, and also to kind of add on to that, for those who may think a doula is just an extra doctor in the room or
Yeah.
a birth educator who's just spilling information that you could easily Google. What
Mhm.
differences do those roles play in people's experiences and outcomes?
Yes, that is a beautiful question. Um, so the first part of that question around concerns that young people I've seen and heard from is just the access to items. When I was interning first with the birth justice team here at SisterSong, we had what's called a care fund. And I do acknowledge that the care fund is on pause, but as soon as I hear information, I would love to send that out to you all. But the care fund was meant to be able to provide baby items to folks, and it was for all ages. And so I'm talking strollers, diapers, wipes, bottles, breast pumps, whatever folks need. And I know that is often a growing concern for young people is how can I afford these very expensive items? You can get WIC, right, to cover the groceries and, maybe Medicaid to cover healthcare. But who's helping you get diapers? And so I'm always looking at organizations and other resources just to be able to provide items for young people. I know that's a big concern. You all are already doing this work, which is beautiful, but helping more young people be able to get exposed to how to parent because parenthood is so taboo for our young folks and it's something that they should not be thinking about until later on in life. But I'm gonna be honest, I don't care what age you are, no one prepares you for parenthood. And especially when we're talking about our young people, there's really a lack of education. And so I'm always running to young folks who are like, well, how do I do this? How do I put my kid in daycare or know what daycare is good for them to go to when I'm also still trying to finish my coursework? And so I would say baby items, education. And then another thing that I also hear with young people is like, well, my life is now around my kid and that's all I'm focused on. And I also want to offer is that you are still young, you still have your whole life ahead of you, and you can go to college. You can get into your career. You can start that business that you've always dreamed of. Um, and being able to offer those tools and steps to be able to help people to be able to achieve those things. We say it, but what are we really doing to ensure that a person who just had a baby can still attend college out of state if that's what they choose to do so? That's also another concern I hear from young folks is like they feel like their life has to stop and that's their full focus is their child, but your life doesn't have to stop. And again, leaning on your community for your support can help you still be able to map out your own life goals and your own joys and all the resources that you may need. And speaking of resources, to go into doulas and midwives, I will not complicate the difference between doulas and midwives. So midwives are folks who are essentially nurses. So they have a nursing degree, medical background. They can deliver the child. They can do pretty much most things that like an OBGYN can do when delivering a baby. So a doula, on the other hand, does not necessarily have to be a nurse, does not have to have medical background, but that does not mean that they are not valuable. Doulas are someone who offers the physical, the emotional, the social care that you need. Doulas work for you, just like your doctor and all the folks. Your doula works for you. Your doula is your advocate. Your doula is your voice when you are in so much pain during labor that you can't get the words out. Your doula is so in tune to you that they already know what you're thinking and they're saying, I know that they want to ask for this. And so a doula is just a person who's, hey, can you watch my child for 5 minutes so I could go take a shower? A doula can do that. A doula can help prep food for you during your pregnancy, postpartum. So they are just your go-to person. They're not meant to take away the grandparents or your partner's role or the role of a doctor. They're here to care for the family and almost be like the middle person between you and the medical provider. But doulas also are very knowledgeable. So they know your body, they know how to work with labor, they know how to work with postpartum. They even know if you're thinking of getting pregnant, you can even start going to a doula who can help you through the prenatal journey as well to getting pregnant. I am a huge fan of doulas. I actually was a doula in training until the pandemic hit. So we would not be where we are today without the work of doulas.
Yeah.
Doulas, I want to also say that it sounds like it's something that's out of reach.
Yes.
Sounds like something that you have to be at a certain place in society, you have to make a certain amount of
Mm-hmm.
money. It's this big thing.
Mm-hmm.
And while most doulas or some doulas do cost
Yeah.
money, right? Whatever rate they charge, there are also so many programs where you can get free
Mm-hmm.
or low cost doula support as well. And
Mm-hmm.
I also was one of those people right around the pandemic, doing the doula work and really
Mm-hmm.
stepping into that. And
Yeah.
that was kind of breathed out of my own traumatic birth and
Mm-hmm.
wishing that I had more information. But as a young person and not really never doing this before, I didn't really know. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know the questions to ask. Nobody really around me really knew. My mom's a doctor, so she's amazing and she was there, but she's not an OBGYN. And so there were certain things that even her as a former teen mom
Mm-hmm.
didn't really know, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that work was breathed out of that, but kind of going around and coming back to what I was really originally saying, in my work early on as a doula, I worked with organizations that would pay me to
Mm-hmm.
give free services to parents.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
so it may take some work to find them, and we can certainly find resources and
Yes.
link them on you, but
Yes.
it's important to know that it is not out of reach for you.
Yes. I'm so glad you said that because that is a little bit of the work that I'm doing now. So my role is very expansive. And one of the things, because I just hold a special place for supporting our young parents and ensuring that they have resources, is finding more opportunities for young people to have doula access. And so it's in a very early stage in development, but I'm working with some community partners to, one, not only help folks get connected to doula care, but two, to be able to train up our young people today to be in doula. So there's a beautiful partner that I have based in Florida where their organization is a doula training organization for ages 16 to 24 years old, because we know the value that doulas play, and we know that young people are capable of being doulas for their peers. And so these are some of the things that should be coming through in the next year or so. And I would love to be able to share that resource to you and to your community. And I also think, to the folks listening to this episode, just as much as you may, want to receive that care, you may also want to be able to give that care back one day. And so there, like Brandy said, there are programs. When I was a doula, I was technically a free doula for folks where a hospital started a doula program, and I got to assist during, they were hospital births, but there's programs now where you can do home births if you're interested in learning about home births. You can even do birthing center support. So if you feel like a calling throughout your journey, again, your own life goals, you can become a doula yourself too. And there are so many organizations that we can, be sure to connect you with, just at least get your feet wet and started um, in that journey.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's so neat. I mean, starting at 16 years old, which is really awesome for our community,
Mm-hmm.
for someone who may not want that authoritative kind of role in their life to have
Yeah.
a peer similar to themselves. That's an amazing opportunity. So we'll definitely be looking forward to all of those insights that you get. However, I'm noticing we're talking a lot about, pregnancy, birth, and even a little bit of prenatal things. I'm curious, in your lens, what does reproductive look like, during postpartum periods after
Mm,
the baby is here?
yes. So I'm sure there's already a lot of resources that you're probably familiar with postpartum care, of getting on schedule and caring for your bodies. And the one thing that nobody wants to talk about is, I'm sure you heard the joke, that 6 week checkup. And then that 6 week checkup, that means 6 weeks after you delivered your child, your fertility spikes. And you have a higher chance of getting pregnant again. So folks are often nervous about that, of like, well, just avoid sex altogether. But I want to challenge that and say your body is healing, and so sex may look different, right? Intimacy may change. Nobody wants to talk about that during postpartum, but intimacy is still a key part of who we are as humans. I believe we should be engaging in intimacy through the rest of our lives. I don't care if you're 80, 90 years old. Forms of intimacy, and intimacy does not always have to be penetrative sex. Intimacy can be cuddling, it can be kissing, it can be a little bit of foreplay, it can be oral, it can be so many other ways. Those things are still just as important. Now you're also navigating a new body. Your body just went through birth. And so you're probably like, oh, please don't touch me. I don't know what's happening with this body. But I want to say your body is beautiful. Your body deserves to be loved on and cared for and treated, whether that is with whether it's partner, so you and somebody else or other folks, or solo. Finding your own pleasure is also very important. And so there's so many different ways that you can still experience intimacy and pleasure, even in that postpartum period while your body is healing. And I'm gonna be honest, your body is gonna thank you.
Yeah, it's important. I mean, thank you for giving, again, for giving voice to some of the things that tend to not have a voice, right? And I think, when a lot of people think about advocacy, reproductive justice, things like that, they think of this kind of worldview. They only see it in the context of how does society see this thing, or how do I advocate for this thing to society or to these people that I don't know. But kind of what you said is also very much so interpersonally and intrapersonally. How do we have reproductive justice? And so I'd like for us to sit there for just a little bit, because one thing that you said sparked a thought in me when you talked about that 6-week checkup. And people think about it a lot of different ways. I kind of rolled my eyes because a lot of the conversation that I hear is that then gives maybe a partner the green light. It's go time, right? And they're looking for that date. Some people don't honor that date, and some people don't maybe understand even the internal healing and the health implications to that time period. But I'd like us to sit and talk a little bit about what does it look like if I am in a committed relationship with someone. I'm married, or I'm just in a dating relationship. I'm in a co-parenting relationship maybe, and we just had a child. And so the idea is that life is just going to go back to what it was. We were sexually active, we were intimate, we were whatever. To make the baby, and maybe even during pregnancy. And so there's an expectation sometimes there that after this 6 I'm entitled, right? And so can we talk about how does reproductive justice fit in that space? How can somebody advocate for themselves in a space where it's interpersonal and it may be more challenging?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. And yes, I think with pregnant people, right, the focus goes on them, and as it should. You're about to bring a human to this world. And I think sometimes that partner piece, I hate to admit it, but they're also like, they don't understand fully what your body is going. They think, okay, well, you had the baby, let's have sex. Like, what's the big deal? But they don't often understand, the process of what it looks like for that body to heal. And so reproductive justice is something that is not just a work I do, but I think of it as a way of living. It's understanding that every day I am trying to create a just world, not just for the people around me, but within my own life. I am literally changing by the day, just my own life story. And so one of the things that I do a lot is lean into that bodily autonomy piece of reproductive justice. And that in this space is so important, is you have the autonomy over your body on how you want, to navigate that relationship after you have your child. And one thing I will say is what we talk a lot about in sex ed is sexual communication. Communicate with your partner. Yes, when y'all first met, it was a fun time, great time. Love that. Maybe during pregnancy, like you said, but communicate with your partner that that your body is going to be healing. That the things that y'all used to get down to do might take some time to get back to doing, and that your body may change. Things that you used to like before the baby, you might not like anymore. And but that's part of just life. I don't have a child, but I know that my life has changed from when I was 20 to the age I am now. The things that I used to think was cool, I'm not into it no more, and that's okay. And so communicating that with your partner, of expressing what you feel like your needs are going to be after the child, and also because your partner, they're trying so hard to understand, but they just won't know because they may not ever be able to birth a child themselves. Also give them the space to share what they feel like they may need, right? And I know folks, they're like, well, they're not pregnant. And I want to challenge that, like, but you're still in a partner relationship, or you're still trying to engage in some level of a connection, that their autonomy, they have the right to want to have some type of sexual engagement and have pleasure and intimacy. They're totally entitled to that. And so you talk about that. You put in place, maybe you say, okay, let's actually give our bodies 6 weeks. I don't want any penetrative sex, but maybe we find time to just have a makeout session. Or maybe we just cuddle naked and we just caress each other's body, and you feel on my new postpartum body. And you still find ways to have that intimacy that doesn't have to be a full on hour sex that it used to be like. And that's okay. And then maybe when you get to the place where you feel like, okay, the body's bouncing back a little bit, I'm getting my groove back, then have that conversation again of like, well, what can we do now in the next 8 months or a year from now? So I'm going to really advocate for communicate. I know that's awkward. I know it's hard. We don't like to talk about our sex. We don't like to talk about our needs. But now more than ever, you're really going to have, because I'm going to be honest, if we don't talk about it, that's when we start to see that partner pulling away. That's when it feels like your partner is like, well, you're not into me anymore. You're only focused on a baby. And it's like, well, yeah, I had a baby. But also, like I said, you are a parent, but also you have your life too. And this relationship is part of that life too. So communicate, and work through those boundaries, or put those boundaries in place that is needed for both sides or all sides.
Yeah, you're absolutely, I love all them gems. You're absolutely right. And I mean, as cliche as it sounds, again, you're so right. Communication is so key. And I think a lot of those challenges or discomfort in those relationships stem down to kind of the topics that we've been going on about like it being a taboo, and just
Mm-hmm.
societal norms and expectations, or being in places with people who may not understand something. But
Yeah.
again, just tackling on to why communication is so key. But to kind of improve those discussions within relationships, I think is why like this conversation and these platforms are so important, so they can kind of, get a sense and an idea, and be educated in these things that they were maybe not taught or they didn't know about. So how can we as organizations and
Mm-hmm.
just social platforms continue to create space for, these sorts of topics, whether it be intimacy with partners or oneself, without bringing shame to the idea, and kind of just destigmatizing, everything in between.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it starts with us just having the conversations more often. In my personal life, my friends and family know that I am here to talk about all things sex. Let's talk.
Okay.
There's nothing TMI in my life. Actually, give me more information and more details and description.
Okay.
I need all the information, and I work to normalize that with the young people I work with. I'm working with a group of students at a university. I'm in Atlanta right now, and they're not parents, but they're college students who may think they're pregnant or navigating pregnancy and what it may look like for them. And one thing I entered their space by, we just normalized just a conversation around sex. I started off with asking what they've learned or what they feel, or how would they feel if they got pregnant, and do they know their resources? How do they decide if they want a parent? And just really creating space for them to just share all the things that they have been holding on to. I love when people pour out the misinformation like, well, I heard that if you use 2 condoms, it prevents it's like, no, let's debunk these double condom use things. We're not doing that. But I love that. Let's talk about it so then I can re-enter the accurate information, because there's so much misinformation out there, and it's intentional because we live in a society that doesn't want folks to learn about sex, that doesn't want young people to experience pregnanthood. And so we have to be intentional of just, hi y'all, we're going to talk about sex today, but we're going to dive deep. This is not going to be your average STI conversation. We're going to talk about toys. We're going to talk about different positions. We're going to talk about all the things and just being okay with normalizing that and offering different tools. I say talk with your partner. Conversation like this can be hard. I tell people, write it down. Write a letter to your partner. Make a little notes and leave it a sticky note. Be like, can you read this later? Take time to reflect before you share. Those are other tools that you can use. So just being able to offer different ways that people can learn and people can communicate, people can advocate for themselves, just providing different tools for them.
Yeah. One thing that you said kind of stuck with, well, a couple things stuck. Even the advice to write a note or write a letter, because there are so many people who you were never taught. I was one of those people that was never really taught outside of school. And I'm somebody who's like, let's talk about it all. And my freshly teenage daughter is like, but it is what it is, right? And so it breaks down those barriers. I think that there are a couple things that happen, and we talk a lot about this. One, we like to debunk things because who said?
Yeah.
Who was the first one that said that this is taboo? Who's the first person that said if you talk about sex or you talk about pleasure or sexuality or whatever, that is inherently bad, or it's gonna, make you go a certain direction and whatever it is. And one thing that I've also said a lot is I have been really adamant about having these conversations with my daughter, and she's a completely different human than I was at her age. And I won't say, I mean, granted, she's a different human. She was going to be. But some of the behaviors that I engaged in at her age are not even on her radar. And one thing that I attest that to is we can talk about it. If she's thinking, oh, so and so said this. In fact, I will say this, and I'm gonna not say too much because I don't want to out anybody. But she came home and said, a couple of my friends were there together and they were making out and they were on top of each other and all these things. And she's like, what else is there at this point? You then went to the deep end, right? And that was her reaction. And I look at that and we're able to have a conversation about how that feels and what that looks like for her, but in a really healthy way that doesn't make her feel like she needs to go and find the information for herself, right? And I think that is the disconnect. If we can get over the fact that talking about all of these things, people are going to engage in risky sex behaviors, really, in some cases, because they saw it on porn and that's what they thought was real life. And so we see all of these things, but we're not actually debunking that by not talking about it. We're just letting people explore and have that idea. So I say all that to say, I really appreciate what you brought to the table of just, we're going to lay it all out. The things that you may read in a book and also the things that you're not going to probably hear anywhere because nobody's really talking about it. And we're going to explore it all, and no question is too big and nothing's off the table. And this is what it is. And so I think that also gives, it kind of breathes into my next question of those folks that they were never taught. Maybe they feel a little squeamish about it. Maybe they are still teenagers themselves. So they're in that cusp of, my parent is here in the room with me. I know Divine can attest to this, and I can only say it because she has public videos on it on the website, but she's shared her story even about being in a situation where I'm a teenager and I have my doctor and I have my mom and whatever y'all decide for me.
Yeah.
Right. And so how do those folks who have maybe been even further marginalized, their voices have been stripped from them, whether it be because of age, because of whatever, how do those folks show up in this space and advocate to providers, to educators, to partners, and feel heard when maybe they're not used to feeling heard in anything? They may not even be the person that raises their hand in class for anything, right? How do those folks find their voice?
Mm.
Loaded question. I'm sorry.
No, that is a good question because I was very much that I'm with my pediatrician or my provider and I'm letting my parents just have the conversation. Knowing I'm feeling all sorts of ways and things is hurting, I'm not saying that. That's what my parents are going to talk about. And so I get that. I was a shy kid and I shied away from these conversations. Um, I think for me, what I found helpful before I stepped into this work is I like to read, I like to learn, and so I learned, one you can still find your own information, and so find trusted resource information. And so once I learned how to look up accurate sources like the CDC or other, like if I saw .gov, I was like, well, that came from the government. This must be good information. And so I just started to learn about stuff. I started to learn simple things like mental health, like what is depression and what is anxiety, and then it built to like, well, how do I navigate my period? How do I put on a pad or use a tampon? Do tampons hurt? And I started just Google, use social media to your advantage in this space. I will start there. If you're very shy and you're just like, I can't talk to anyone, find trusted online resources. If it says .gov, it is backed with accurate information. It is essentially backed with researchers and good data that you can lean into. Another thing that I've also done when I go to my doctors is I make a list of all the things I want to talk about with my provider. One, so I don't forget. Two, some things are uncomfortable to just say out loud. Oh, that itch, that burn, that I don't know why. All the things that may be uncomfortable to say, write it. I love writing things down. I make a list and I say, okay, thank you for this appointment, doctor, or after they finish the exam. I did write some things down. Can I show you for us to go through? And then, you start that conversation there. So I would say do your initial research with good information, accurate information, and then write your questions, write your concerns. Maybe you heard about something and you're not sure and you're going to go see your doctor, or you're about to go to school tomorrow and you have a health educator day. Write those things out. And when it comes to your body, when it comes to understanding how your body processes, there is no dumb question. There is no silly question. Um, and that's what we do here at SisterSong. That's what the work of RJ is, for reproductive justice for short, is we're constantly learning about our bodies, and we're constantly having to normalize that these conversations can be hard and uncomfortable. And finding different spaces that, maybe again, I'm always going to advocate for a trusted adult in this space. Someone that's not going to overstep, someone who's not going to take the authority lead, but someone who's like, okay, that's a good concern. Let's work together on how we want to ask this question, or let's work together to get this information. Okay, where did you hear that? Okay, interesting. Let's see if there's data that backs that up. So finding someone that you can trust to even just have that conversation with as well. I'm always going to lean into a trusted person.
I love that. I love that so much, especially with like this new generation. Like you said, take, the best sides of the social platforms that you can. And if your concern is you don't know how to word something, chat GPT, AI, how to word something in a way that makes sense, that you feel, proficient enough to say out loud. Because sometimes medical terms can sound like, do I sound uneducated here saying this? So if you need assistance wording something. And Yup recently actually partnered with organization, Brandy, maybe you know it. But we actually have partnered in a deck of cards that was meant for kind of interview conversation styles with your provider. So if you don't know how to ask it, there's a card.
Network has a great
Yes,
card for young parents.
yes, and Yup partnered with them in creating that. So I think this episode would be a great place to link that for people who need to have those serious and direct conversations with any kind of provider, but doesn't know how to.
And I
Absolutely.
also want to add to that, is your social media influencers. I cannot get to this place of where I was if it was not for the folks that I followed on social media, YouTube videos, but follow social media folks who are sex educators who have been doing this work for years. And so following people of color who have done their research and have produced books and TikTok videos about this have been very crucial for me as I continue to learn about RJ and just sexual health in general.
Yeah. This has been such a great conversation. It's come full circle, from starting out just kind of hearing about your background and to really what SisterSong is doing, and just even more globally what people can be doing. A lot of times when we think of advocacy or we think of justice, things like that, like I've been saying, it doesn't have to be having a bullhorn at a march. It can be that, but it doesn't have to be that. It doesn't have to be conversations with other people. It can really be getting to the root of what do I want? What do I need? What makes me feel valued and whole and seen, and all of the things. And so it can be very much so an internal practice. So whether you are at the stage where you're trying to figure yourself out as an individual, or you're at the stage where you are, putting into practice like policy changes, everyone at every stage is important. So I appreciate you for bringing all of that to this space. And as we close out, I'd love for you to just leave us with, one, if there are any last nuggets that you want to share, and two, if there's I know that you have previously worked with Dream Clinic. We have recorded with Dr. Mays and also their Young Mothers Rising program, multiple times. And so we have that in common. And we've talked about doing some work together. But is there anything that you'd like to leave the folks, whether it be nuggets of wisdom, or even what is SisterSong up to? How can we get connected? How can people join on your journey?
Yes, I'll just leave listeners is that you are doing an amazing job. And you also deserve pleasure, you also deserve intimacy, you also deserve joy, and you also deserve to live your very best life while being an amazing parent. So I want to leave that with you. And some of the upcoming things that we have going on at SisterSong is this is our biannual conference year. So we will have our Let's Talk About Sex conference in Chicago, which is the birthplace of what? Reproductive justice. And so we are going home. We're bringing RJ home this year. It will be in August, so August 6th through the 9th. And part of the conference is I'm working on a youth pre-con. And so this pre-con is meant to be for ages 18 to 24, 25. I'm going to say loosely. But we're talking about all the things sexual health, reproductive justice, human rights. And so this pre-con is for young people to be presenters on the things that they know and learn and want to teach their peers. And also for young people who are like, I'm interested in this work, but I don't even know where to get started. I don't even know what topics I'm interested in. This will be that space for you to be a learner, for you to meet other peers who are doing the work that you're into or want to learn more about. And also, let's network. Let's see if we can get some job security from other organizations that will be there. So I do want to plug our Let's Talk About Sex conference that's coming up in a few months. I will say we will have childcare provided. So if I know, especially being in this call space, I know y'all are parenting. And so we always ensure, that's RJ, is that any events that we have where we're bringing community members, we always ensure that there's some level of childcare provided. And, whatever needs folks have, we try to make sure we're meeting that. And so stay tuned. We will be dropping information about that. If you are a student, we will have like a student discount for you to register with. And we try to make sure that folks can get to the conference. So there will probably be other opportunities for folks to come in at a free to low reduced cost, because this space is for you.
Thank you so much.
Yes. until next time, we may need a part 2 and part 3.
Yes.
All the little things we didn't get too taboo today. But yes, until next time, thank you
Mhm.
for coming on. We definitely appreciate the conversation. So yeah, until next time, if you have any
Yes.
questions, leave us a comment below, DM us, and we will definitely get back to you soon.
Yes. Thank you all so much for your time today. And it's just been a joy to meet you.
Yes.
Mm.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.
SisterSong is a Southern-based national membership organization and the largest multi-ethnic reproductive justice collective in the country. Founded in 1997 by women of color, SisterSong works to shift policies that impact the reproductive lives of marginalized communities. Their youth program empowers people 24 and under, especially Black, Brown, Indigenous, and LGBTQIA+ youth, by creating space for leadership, healing, and organizing. Through trainings, mentorship, advocacy, and community care, SisterSong equips young people to create lasting change and uplift the voices of women of color. To learn more and get connected, visit their website and follow SisterSongs on all social media platforms.
If you enjoyed the Up podcast, please subscribe, share, and leave a comment.
And visit youngunitedparents.org for the information, community, and resources young moms and dads need to thrive.